serious? What was the dirtiest trick ever pulled in the history of war? Dirtiest trick that was conceived but not used was British scientists formulating a plan of dropping anthrax-laced linseed cakes into cattle fields as a bio-nuke of sorts once it worked up the food chain. The government didn't plan on even cleaning the test island up until a group of scientists dropped off contaminated soil at a military research facility and threatened to make further drops in order to ensure the rapid loss of indifference of the government and the equally rapid education of the general public. Terrorism wins again. So there's this kind of honey made in Turkey called mad honey. It's made from the pollen of rhododendron flowers. If you eat very much of it you get very intoxicated. And you often hallucinate. You can even OD on it. A few times in antiquity. It was used as a weapon of war. For example, the Persians left some out for the Romans to find. The Romans are that sweet it right up. And then the Persians attacked them while they were all tripping balls and defenseless. The Russians and their use of a scorched earth policy. I can't think of a better way to flip off your invaders than ruining all your own so when they do take it. It's worthless. Not only that, but the land itself is just too damn cold. So go ahead. Take the land. You will just freeze to death. Congratulations. During the Siege of Kaffa, the Mongols hurled the corpses of the deceased soldiers decimated by the Black Plague into the besieged city. It is considered one of the key events that helped spreading the disease in Western Europe. The British pulled a dirty trick during the African campaign in WWII. Poison. Poisoning wells was a crime. But merely hanging signs was not. The water was perfectly drinkable. Edit, I've had a bunch of requests for sources. But I cannot for the life of me find where I read it originally. The closest references I can find are to the British creating fake minefields out of nothing but signs in the Second Boer War. And some very impressive British WW2 camouflage in Operation Bertram. The US firebombed Tokyo. Because the houses were mostly made of wood. They knew the city would burn. Even the guy who drafted the plan, Robert McNamara, was ashamed of it. They also tried strapping thermite to bats and releasing them over Japan. In the hope they would roost in the houses. Then go off and burn the houses down. The plan was cancelled after all the facilities where this was being tested burned down due to incendiary bats roosting in them. In WW1 the Allies became used to the smell of chemical weapons and would put their gas masks on quickly. The Germans changed their tactics and would use nearly odorless vomit-inducing chemicals that would absorb quickly into the lungs first. Then, once soldiers were vomiting and couldn't keep their gas masks on, they would fire the main artillery barrage containing the lethal chemicals. According to some records in the art of war, it is considered a good strategy to corner your men and have the enemy attempt to wipe them out. Because when the only means of escape survival is through the enemy, then your own men will fight to the death. Throw your soldiers into positions whence there is no escape. Sun TZU. I think the start of WW2 when Hitler made prisoners dress like Polish soldiers and let them attack Germany so that Germany could run over Poland. Sneaky bastard. Not sure if this counts as a trick. But Napoleon prior to the Battle of Marengo. Not only did he cross the Alps with his entire army, a completely unexpected move. But once across, the Austrians thought Napoleon would move to Genoa in order to relieve the siege of that city. Thousands were dying of starvation. And French General Massena desperately called for Napoleon's aid. Napoleon, in a ruthless and surprising move, ignored the calls for help and instead moved to attack the main portion of the Austrian army, eventually winning the Battle of Marengo. Massena surrendered Genoa and it would be years before he eventually forgave Napoleon for abandoning him, and it would be years before Napoleon forgave Massena for surrendering. During the Second World War, German forces would rig crooked wall paintings to explode when straightened with hopes that it would collide officers when they came in to set up command posts. The logic being that Private Joe Blow clearing the building, looking for enemies isn't going to care, or even notice if a painting is askew. But General Robert Important Guy, who sets up his new command post in the building and is in his office for hours, probably would. The Germans also strung piano wire across roads to take out anyone riding by in a jeep. Counter-terrorism and anti-crime units have been seeding black market arms dealers with C4 explosive laced ammo. The bullets tend to have a small exploding effect on the weapons, rendering the weapon useless. So the only solution is to stop using that arms dealer. Now you can't trust your existing arms dealer, and you have to find a new one that may or may not have tainted ammo, or even be a Fed. In essence, it shuts down an entire illegal arms industry at the cost of about 1 or 2 crates of C4 bullets mixed in with the others. Genghis Khan. In a large-scale attack against the fortress at Volohay, after being unable to breach the walls, demanded 1,000 cats and 10,000 Chinese swallows in exchange for lifting the siege. When the defenders sent out the animals, Genghis took them and tied tufts of cotton to their tails and ignited them. At which point the animals rushed back to their homes within the city, igniting hundreds of small fires, while Genghis' army attacked again and took the fortress amidst the panic. The Red Wedding actually happened. It happened twice. Look up the Black Dinner of 1442. Back in the English Civil War, there was a certain nobility in battle where you were supposed to be able to see your opponents and you would stand and fight. Cromwell decided this was stupid and in numerous battles would send troops round the side hidden by trees and bushes to tear through the cavaliers before the fight properly began. Was a lot dirtier a trick at the time. Letting the Germans bomb Coventry, so that the Germans wouldn't suspect that their codes were cracked and the British knew they were going to bomb Coventry. Maybe when Hitler attacked Soviet Union in 1941. Stalin was so furious and perhaps disappointed that he didn't do any public speeches or appearances for more than 2 weeks. Stalin didn't feel betrayed by Hitler. He knew an attack was coming, he just didn't expect it quite so quickly. Hopefully it hasn't been mentioned already, but some of the USA's tricks during the Cold War to assassinate Fidel Castro were pretty mad. It was considered that this would cause his downfall as no one would take him seriously after that. We were on patrol in our striker cruising through Kandahar city. I was a medic, so we were in the rear vehicle and I was told to never let anyone pass the convoy. Usually all it took was a wave of the M240 mounted on the back to get them to back off our convoy. But not this fearless Afghani. I waved that machine gun towards his head and he kept getting closer and closer, pointing at the middle of his skull as to taunt me into blowing him away. As he got closer and closer, I knew I had to act. As he got within a stone's throw, I realized I had a yogurt sitting next to me above the striker. He was still taunting me, pointing at his head, pushing his fingers into the front of his skull. I had had enough of this smartass. But I wasn't there to kill people. I was there to help them. So I grabbed the yogurt and hucked it at his windshield. It was a perfect Tom Brady Super Bowl touchdown throw as it splattered all over his windshield. He couldn't see anything and had to slam on his brakes, causing the person behind him to ram into the back of his car. He stopped and got out and flipped me off. I waved back to him as we drove off into the harsh sunset of Afghanistan. Operation Acoustic Kitty or something like that. Long story short, assassinate Castro with exploding cat.